Picture this. You're sitting in a quiet room, alone with your thoughts. The world outside fades away, and for a moment, it's just you, your mind, your memories, your sense of self. You think about the choices you've made, the paths you've taken, the person you've become. You feel, in this moment, like the author of your own story, the master of your own fate. But what if I told you that this sense of control is an illusion? What if the person you believe yourself to be, the decisions you think are yours, the desires you feel are authentic, are not truly your own? What if the story of your life is being written by forces you can't see, forces that operate beneath the surface of your awareness, shaping your thoughts, your actions, your very identity? This is the unsettling truth of self-deception. We like to believe that we are rational, self-aware beings, capable of seeing the world and ourselves clearly. But the reality is far more complex. Our minds are not transparent windows into reality. They are more like funhouse mirrors, distorting and reshaping the truth to fit our needs, our fears, our desires. We tell ourselves stories about who we are, stories that comfort us, protect us, and justify our actions. But these stories are often lies. Lies we tell ourselves to avoid facing the uncomfortable, the painful, the unknown. Consider this. When you fail at something, do you blame external circumstances, or do you confront your own shortcomings? When you succeed, do you credit luck and timing, or do you attribute it entirely to your own brilliance? When you look in the mirror, do you see yourself as you truly are, or as you wish to be? These are not easy questions to answer, because the truth is often buried beneath layers of self-deception. Self-deception is not just a personal failing. It is a fundamental feature of the human condition. It is the mechanism by which we navigate a world that is too complex, too chaotic, too overwhelming to fully understand. It is the shield that protects us from the harsh realities of existence, from our own mortality, our own limitations, our own capacity for harm. But it is also the prison that keeps us trapped in illusions, preventing us from seeing the world and ourselves as we truly are. And yet, we cling to these illusions because the alternative is terrifying. To confront the truth about ourselves is to face the abyss of uncertainty, to acknowledge that we are not the heroes of our own stories, but flawed, fragile beings struggling to make sense of a world we can never fully control. It is to confront the possibility that our lives are not as meaningful, as purposeful, as we would like to believe. But here's the twist. What if this realization is not a prison, but a key? What if the first step toward true self-awareness is to see the lies we tell ourselves? What if, by confronting our self-deceptions, we can begin to reclaim our agency, to rewrite the script, to become the authors of our own lives? This is the journey we are about to embark on, a journey into the heart of self-deception. We will explore the hidden forces that shape our perceptions, the psychological and philosophical roots of our illusions, and the profound consequences of living in a world where truth is often obscured by lies. And, ultimately, we will discover how to break free from the grip of self-deception, to reclaim our clarity, and to live a life that is truly authentic. But first, we must confront the great question. If self-deception is so pervasive, so ingrained in our nature, how can we ever hope to see the truth? The answer lies not in the lies we tell ourselves, but in the forces that shape them. And to understand those forces, we must venture into the shadows of the human psyche, where the true nature of our self-deceptions and our potential for self-awareness awaits. To understand self-deception, we must first confront its origins, why it exists, how it operates, and why it is so deeply ingrained in the human psyche. Self-deception is not a bug in the system. It is a feature, a survival mechanism honed by evolution, shaped by psychology, and reinforced by society. It is the lens through which we filter reality, a lens that distorts as much as it clarifies. At its core, self-deception is a defense mechanism. It protects us from the unbearable weight of truths about our limitations, our failures, our mortality. The human mind is not equipped to handle the full, unfiltered reality of existence. To do so would be paralyzing. Imagine waking up every day fully aware of the fragility of life, the inevitability of death, the randomness of suffering. It would be impossible to function. And so, our minds construct illusions, stories, beliefs, and narratives that soften the edges of reality, that make life bearable. Carl Jung, the pioneering psychologist, called this the shadow, the part of ourselves we reject, deny, or ignore. The shadow is not just a repository of our darker impulses. It is also the seat of our self-deceptions. It is where we hide the truths we cannot face, the parts of ourselves we cannot accept. Jung believed that much of our behavior is driven by these hidden forces, forces we rarely acknowledge or understand. When we deceive ourselves, it is often the shadow at work, whispering its lies into the ear of our conscious mind. But self-deception is not just a personal phenomenon, it is also a social one. We live in a world that rewards certain illusions and punishes others. Society tells us to be confident, successful, happy, even when we are not. It tells us to hide our vulnerabilities, to mask our insecurities, to present a polished version of ourselves to the world. And so, we learn to deceive not only ourselves but others as well. We become actors in a play, performing roles we did not choose, reciting lines we do not believe. Friedrich Nietzsche understood this well. He saw self-deception as a necessary lie, a fiction we tell ourselves to survive in a meaningless world. Sometimes, he wrote, people don't want to hear the truth because they don't want their illusions destroyed. Nietzsche believed that we cling to our illusions because they give us a sense of purpose, a reason to keep going in the face of life's inherent absurdity. But he also warned that these illusions can become prisons, trapping us in lives that are not truly our own. Arthur Schopenhauer took this idea even further. He believed that self-deception is rooted in the will, the blind, irrational force that drives all human behavior. According to Schopenhauer, the will is constantly striving, constantly seeking satisfaction, but it can never be satisfied. And so, we deceive ourselves into believing that the next achievement, the next relationship, the next possession will bring us happiness. But it never does. The will is insatiable, and so we are trapped in an endless cycle of desire and disappointment. Jean-Paul Sartre, the existentialist philosopher, offered a different perspective. He argued that self-deception, what he called bad faith, is a refusal to accept our freedom. We are, Sartre believed, condemned to be free, to make choices, to create our own meaning in a meaningless world. But this freedom is terrifying, and so we deceive ourselves into believing that we are not free, that our choices are determined by fate, by society, by our past. We become, in Sartre's words, actors who believe in the roles they are playing. And then there is the role of culture and society. Aldous Huxley, in his dystopian novel Brave New World, envisioned a society where self-deception is not just tolerated but encouraged. In this world, people are kept docile and content through a combination of pleasure, distraction, and conditioning. They are taught to love their servitude, to believe that they are free, even as they are controlled by forces they cannot see. Sound familiar? Today, we live in a world where self-deception is not just a personal failing but a cultural norm. Social media platforms encourage us to present curated versions of ourselves, to hide our flaws and exaggerate our successes. Advertising tells us that happiness can be bought, that meaning can be found in material possessions. Political propaganda manipulates our beliefs, feeding us lies that confirm our biases and deepen our divisions. But here's the paradox. Self-deception is both a prison and a shield. It protects us from the unbearable weight of truth, but it also keeps us trapped in illusions. It allows us to function in a chaotic world, but it also prevents us from seeing the world and ourselves as we truly are. And so, we must ask, is it possible to break free from self-deception? Can we learn to see the truth, not just about the world but about ourselves? The answer lies not in rejecting our illusions but in understanding them, in seeing the forces that shape our perceptions and learning to navigate them with awareness and intention. This is the journey we are about to embark on, a journey into the heart of self-deception. We will explore the hidden forces that shape our perceptions, the psychological and philosophical roots of our illusions, and the profound consequences of living in a world where truth is often obscured by lies. And, ultimately, we will discover how to break free from the grip of self-deception, to reclaim our clarity, and to live a life that is truly authentic. But first, we must confront the great question. If self-deception is so pervasive, so ingrained in our nature, how can we ever hope to see the truth? The answer lies not in the lies we tell ourselves, but in the forces that shape them. And to understand those forces, we must venture into the shadows of the human psyche, where the true nature of our self-deceptions and our potential for self-awareness awaits. Self-deception is not a passive force. It is an active, insidious presence that shapes every aspect of our lives. It influences how we see ourselves, how we interact with others, and how we navigate the world. But its effects are not always obvious. Like a shadow, it operates beneath the surface, quietly distorting our perceptions, our decisions, and our relationships. Consider this. How often do you make decisions based on what you think you want, rather than what you truly desire? How often do you justify actions that, deep down, you know are wrong? How often do you ignore red flags in relationships, careers, or personal habits, convincing yourself that everything is fine? These are the unseen consequences of self-deception, the ways it silently shapes our lives. Often without our awareness point, one of the most profound consequences of self-deception is its impact on our sense of identity. We like to believe that we know ourselves, that we are the authors of our own stories. But the reality is far more complex. Our sense of self is not fixed. It is fluid, constantly shaped by the stories we tell ourselves and the lies we believe. When we deceive ourselves, we create a false self, a persona that is not truly us, but a reflection of our fears, our desires, and our need for approval. This false self can become a prison, trapping us in lives that are not truly our own. We pursue careers we don't care about, stay in relationships that don't fulfill us, and adopt beliefs that don't align with our values, all because we are afraid to confront the truth. We become strangers to ourselves, living lives that are hollow, unfulfilled, and disconnected from our true desires. But the consequences of self-deception extend far beyond the individual. It also shapes our relationships, our communities, and our societies. When we deceive ourselves, we deceive others. We present false versions of ourselves, hiding our vulnerabilities, masking our insecurities, and projecting an image of confidence and success. This creates a culture of pretense, where authenticity is rare and connection is superficial. In relationships, self-deception can lead to patterns of dysfunction and codependency. We stay in toxic relationships because we convince ourselves that things will get better, that our partner will change, that we are not worthy of something more. We ignore red flags, rationalize bad behavior, and suppress our own needs, all because we are afraid to face the truth. In communities and societies, self-deception can lead to collective delusion. We cling to outdated beliefs, resist change, and ignore evidence that contradicts our worldview. We create echo chambers, where dissenting voices are silenced and alternative perspectives are dismissed. This creates a culture of conformity, where critical thinking is discouraged and innovation is stifled. And then there are the cognitive biases that reinforce self-deception. The confirmation bias leads us to seek out information that confirms our pre-existing beliefs, while ignoring evidence that contradicts them. The Dunning-Kruger effect causes us to overestimate our own abilities, leading to poor decisions and missed opportunities. The sunk cost fallacy keeps us trapped in situations that no longer serve us, simply because we have already invested time, energy, or resources. These biases operate beneath the surface of our awareness, quietly shaping our perceptions and decisions. They create a feedback loop where our self-deceptions are constantly reinforced, making it increasingly difficult to see the truth. But perhaps the most insidious consequence of self-deception is its impact on our sense of meaning and purpose. When we deceive ourselves, we lose touch with our true desires, our values, and our sense of purpose. We chase after external validation, money, status, approval, believing that these things will bring us happiness, but they never do. The more we chase these illusions, the more empty and disconnected we feel. This creates a cycle of dissatisfaction, where we are constantly striving for something more, something better, but never finding it. We become trapped in a never-ending pursuit of happiness, always looking for the next achievement, the next relationship, the next possession. But the truth is, happiness cannot be found in external things. It can only be found within. And so, we must ask, how do we break free from this cycle? How do we see the truth, not just about the world, but about ourselves? The answer lies not in rejecting our illusions, but in understanding them, in seeing the forces that shape our perceptions and learning to navigate them with awareness and intention. This is the journey we are about to embark on, a journey into the heart of self-deception. We will explore the hidden forces that shape our perceptions, the psychological and philosophical roots of our illusions, and the profound consequences of living in a world where truth is often obscured by lies. And ultimately, we will discover how to break free from the grip of self-deception, to reclaim our clarity, and to live a life that is truly authentic. But first, we must confront the great question. If self-deception is so pervasive, so ingrained in our nature, how can we ever hope to see the truth? The answer lies not in the lies we tell ourselves, but in the forces that shape them. And to understand those forces, we must venture into the shadows of the human psyche, where the true nature of our self-deceptions and our potential for self-awareness awaits. Breaking free from self-deception is not a passive act. It is a rebellion, a deliberate, often painful journey into the depths of our own minds. It requires courage, self-awareness, and a willingness to confront the uncomfortable truths we have spent a lifetime avoiding. But it is also a journey of liberation, a path toward reclaiming our clarity, our authenticity, and our sense of purpose. The first step in this rebellion is to confront the unconscious forces that drive our behavior. Carl Jung called this process individuation, the integration of the conscious and unconscious parts of the self. It is a journey of self-discovery, where we confront our shadows, our fears, and our hidden desires, and bring them into the light of awareness. This process begins with self-reflection. Take a moment to ask yourself, what are the stories I tell myself about who I am? What are the beliefs I hold about the world, about others, about myself? Where do these beliefs come from? Are they truly mine? Or have I inherited them from my family, my culture, my society? For example, if you find yourself constantly seeking validation from others, ask yourself, where does this need come from? Is it rooted in childhood experiences, societal expectations, or a deeper fear of inadequacy? By tracing these patterns back to their source, you can begin to disentangle yourself from them, to make choices that are truly your own rather than reactions to unconscious wounds. But awareness alone is not enough. To truly break free, we must also challenge the external forces that shape our lives. This means questioning the narratives we have been taught about success, happiness, and what it means to live a good life. It means resisting the pressure to conform, to follow the path laid out for us by society, and instead forging our own way. Friedrich Nietzsche called this process becoming who you are. He believed that true freedom lies not in following the rules, but in creating them, in defining your own values and living by them, regardless of what others think. This is not an easy path. It requires courage, resilience, and a willingness to face criticism and rejection. But it is also the only path to authentic freedom. Consider the story of Viktor Frankl, the psychiatrist and Holocaust survivor who wrote Man's Search for Meaning. In the midst of unimaginable suffering, Frankl discovered that even when everything is taken from us, our possessions, our freedom, even our loved ones, we still have the power to choose our response. This is the essence of existential freedom, the realization that, no matter our circumstances, we always have a choice. But how do we cultivate this kind of freedom in our own lives? One way is through mindfulness, the practice of paying attention to the present moment without judgment. By becoming more aware of our thoughts, feelings, and actions, we can begin to see the patterns that govern our behavior and make conscious choices rather than reacting on autopilot. Another way is through critical thinking. In a world saturated with information and manipulation, it is essential to question everything: the news we consume, the products we buy, the beliefs we hold. By developing a skeptical mindset, we can resist the influence of propaganda, advertising, and social conditioning and make decisions that align with our true values. Finally, breaking free requires community. We are social creatures, and our choices are inevitably shaped by the people around us. But this does not mean we are powerless. By surrounding ourselves with people who support our growth, challenge our assumptions, and encourage us to think for ourselves, we can create an environment that fosters true freedom. This rebellion against self-deception is not a one-time event. It is an ongoing process, a daily practice of awareness, courage, and self-determination. It is not easy, but it is necessary if we are to live lives that are truly our own. And yet, even as we break free from self-deception, we must confront a deeper truth, that freedom itself is not absolute. We are shaped by our biology, our environment, and the choices of those who came before us. But within these constraints, there is still room for agency, for creativity, for meaning. This brings us to the final, most powerful realization that true freedom lies not in the absence of constraints, but in the way we respond to them. The ultimate truth about self-deception is this: it is not an all-or-nothing proposition. We are neither entirely free nor entirely determined. Instead, we exist in a delicate balance between the two, a space where freedom and constraint intersect, where choice and necessity coexist. This realization is both liberating and humbling. It liberates us from the burden of absolute responsibility, the idea that we must control every aspect of our lives. At the same time, it humbles us by reminding us that we are part of something larger, a web of relationships, systems, and forces that shape our existence in ways we cannot fully comprehend. But within this balance lies the possibility of true freedom. Freedom is not the absence of constraints. It is the ability to navigate them with awareness, creativity, and purpose. It is the ability to make choices that align with our deepest values, even in the face of adversity. It is the ability to find meaning in the midst of chaos, to create beauty in the face of suffering, to live authentically in a world that often demands conformity. This is the essence of Viktor Frankl's insight, that even in the most oppressive circumstances, we can choose our attitude, our response, our way of being. This is the essence of Nietzsche's call to become who you are, to embrace the constraints of existence and use them as a canvas for self-creation. This is the essence of Jung's shadow work, to integrate the hidden parts of ourselves and reclaim our wholeness. And so, the journey ends not with a definitive answer, but with a question. What will you do with the freedom you have? Will you cling to the illusion of control? Or will you embrace the uncertainty of existence? Will you follow the path laid out for you? Or will you carve your own? The choice, as always, is yours.